Oh, hey everyone. How's it going? It's Crazy Professor here. And I wanted to do one last video for you guys. I wanted to sort of just kind of wrap it all up and conclude it and tie it in a nice little bow here and send you guys on your way on to your next class. As we wrap up our class, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this class. We've covered some important ideas. We've really dug deeply, I think, into our own lives, trying to become self-aware. And hopefully this has been a good experience for you. It's been a great experience for me. I always love working with my online students, especially when I see them begin to get it, to get some of these ideas, and to really begin to reflect on how they impact their own lives and their own ministries. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about knowing some things about leadership, right? But it's really about transformation, about us becoming more effective leaders and really impacting the lives of other people, of growing dynamic and thriving churches and ministries and organizations and wherever the Lord is leading us. And so hopefully you found the content of this class, the topic, the purpose of this class, the approach to this class, beneficial to you and to help you to grow as a leader. I really couldn't ask for anything more as an instructor to see that these ideas have really impacted your thinking and practice of leadership. And of course, you know, the good thing is we have a lifetime to learn and develop as leaders, don't we? And so 7 weeks, you know, is not enough really to make a significant change in our life. But if it can challenge you, if it can push you a little bit farther along, if it can give you some new tools and sort of approaches about thinking about leadership, then we've done a good job. And now you've got the rest of your life and your ministry to really continue to grow, to continue to learn, to continue to self-reflect and refine your own sense of calling and passion and purpose and gifts and all those things so that you can become an effective leader. So I just want to recap some of the main areas of the course, and this might be helpful for you to sort of pull it all together. It might be helpful for you for the final exam. Who knows? So anyhow, hang on while I go over some of the main topics of the class and then give you one final parting shot from a very important story from Scripture that I think you'll like. Now, the first thing we talked about in this class was the need to understand the principles of leadership development, right? Not of leadership, but of leadership development. In other words, what are those things that help people to develop as leaders? And we said that there's some basic things that have to happen in order for us to grow in our leadership effectiveness. Things such as having a mentor, having somebody in our life who can give us feedback, right? Because feedback is an important part of growing as a leader. 360 evaluations, right? Having the kinds of honest conversations, allowing people to speak into our lives, who can show us things that we can't see. And one of the things that's important as we grow as leaders is really to remove the blind spots and the things that we don't see that other people see that may be a hindrance to our leadership effectiveness. And so the more we can get those kind of close relationships, to be transparent, to ask other people, hey, what do you see in here? How do you think I handle that situation? You got any feedback, any tips for me, right? And it's not easy, because we're often going to hear things that we don't want to hear, right? If it was something you wanted to hear, like, oh, you were great, you were the man, you did it perfectly, it's like, that's not going to help you grow as a leader. In fact, all that's going to do is puff you up and make you more self-assured. There's an interesting phenomenon about smart people and successful people is it's difficult for them to grow because they feel like their intelligence and their success and their so far has got them to a place where I made it now, and I know more than everybody else in the room, so why do I need to listen? And those are the hardest people, those smart, creative people. It's the hardest people to help them develop. But it's important even for them, right, to continue to reflect and to be open and to learn appropriate humility and whatnot. Another thing that needs to be there that we talked about early in the class is there has to be challenge, right? If you're not being challenged either by the organization, if you are not challenging yourself, right, as a leader, you're not going to grow. Because we have to grow. We have to push through to new ideas, new levels, new opportunities, right? If you stay in your comfort zone for too long, chances are you're not going to grow as a leader. And I know this is hard because sometimes we get stuck, especially older guys like me, right? It's kind of like, I got my ministry, I got my career, and this is what I do. And so it's always a challenge to push through and to kind of reinvent ourselves and find new challenges for ourselves and set new goals for ourselves so that we can grow. And again, as you're a leader and a leader maker, right, you have other people under you, you have to be aware to always be giving them appropriately challenging assignments, right? So while it's safe to say, all right, I'm just going to kind of, bracket this person's responsibility and give them lots of, support, and I'm not going to let them fail, that doesn't help, right? Just like your kids, you need to let them get out there, you need to let them try and skin their knees a few times so they understand, what life is about. And it's the same thing with people under you in ministries. You have to give them challenge, give them the space and the opportunity to fail. All right, as scary as that is for some of you, you have to let people fail in order for them to grow, right? And so it's a principle for you as a leader maker, someone who oversees other leaders, and it's a principle for you in your own life to grow and to challenge and to take risks, Lord, to get out of your comfort zone, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so that's what it takes for you to grow as a leader. Now, the next thing that's important to grow as a leader is knowledge of effective leadership principles. And in this class, we used a great book, Kouzes and Posner's, a classic. Really, it's hard to get something better. It's very accessible. It's got some good research behind it. And it's very easy to remember, right? There are 5 key principles, right? You need to continue to expose yourself to good ideas and good thinking and good research about leadership. There's tons of stuff out there. Go for the good stuff. Don't go for the low-hanging, easy fruit, John Smith's, 3 easy principles. Go for the good stuff, right? Your leadership development has to be based on valid ideas about leadership. And, it seems like today everybody's got a book, everybody's got an angle, everybody's got a seminar, right? Go for the good stuff, right? And become a discriminating user and applier of leadership information, right? So you guys now, you kind of have a taste for what, good leadership stuff is about. And so to continue to refine your taste for leadership literature, right? And go for the stuff that's a little more challenging. It'll be more challenging for you, but you know what? It'll help you to grow more. It'll be based upon valid ideas and valid theories of leadership. And that's what you want, right? You don't want to build your foundation on shifting sand, right, so to speak. You want to find the good stuff, right? So I encourage you to go out there, be readers, be consumers of the leadership press, and find and use the best kinds of stuff that you can get. And finally, we need to become more self-aware as leaders. And hopefully in this class you began that process. You started that process, and I know some people are more naturally self-aware. They're more sensitive to how they come across. They're more sensitive to their own issues and hang-ups. But a lot of people aren't, and we really probably spend most of our lives and our emotional and psychic energy trying to protect ourselves from our weaknesses, don't we, right? It's kind of a funny oxymoron, right? But we're all kind of wounded puppies in a sense, and we sort of do our best to protect ourselves from really getting at those things and kind of managing the pain and trying to do as good as we can. But really, to grow as a leader means to grow as a healthy human being. And so the degree to which you can grow as a healthy human being is going to impact your leadership. And especially as you begin to go up in leadership. And, there's a lot of wounded leaders out there that develop wounded followers. Excuse me. They're not healthy, and so therefore they inflict pain upon other people. And perhaps you've been the victim of that sort of leadership before, but you don't want to be that kind of leader. You want to be the kind of leader who's healthy, who's self-aware, who's growing, who owns up to their own stuff, who takes responsibility, who doesn't pretend to have it all together, who's transparent and authentic, and all those kinds of things that we know about leadership health. So continue to grow in your self-awareness. Continue to embrace yourself with all your weaknesses, with all your flaws, and allow the Lord to show you and give you new insight and to help you to heal and to grow past some of those things so that you can be a healthy person yourself. So we're talking about things like your emotional health. Your spiritual health obviously is vital for leadership in the kingdom. And then in terms of your own calling, right? Being sure of your calling and those things that are hindering your calling, right? Remember we talked about things like competing identities. We talked about relational issues that hinder people in fully enacting their calling, right? That was from my model of calling. So continue to think about and pray about and work through some of those issues so that you can become fully self-aware and fully confident in your calling as a leader. Good to have a cup of Joe once in a while, right? Last thing I want to leave you with is this right here. There's a great story in the book of Genesis about the patriarch Jacob. Now, most of you know the story of Jacob and his brother Esau. And they were twin brothers, and right out of the gate, literally, Jacob was deceiving his brother. And this went on and on as they grew up. And there was always this competition between Jacob and Esau. And Jacob's mother tended to side with Jacob and tended to aid and abet him, right, in his dysfunction. She's the one that said, hey, why don't you go in and tell your father, your dying father, Isaac, that you are Esau, and then you can get his blessing and inheritance, right? That was a big deal back then, right? We don't really kind of think in those terms today, but back then that was a big deal for him to get his father's blessing. And he did that, right? And afterwards, Esau was fuming mad, and Jacob fled to the countryside when Esau hot on his trail, and he went away and he stayed with his uncle Laban. And he worked with his uncle Laban for many, many years, and we know that finally, he met his match in Laban, right? Because here was somebody who was even more deceitful than Jacob was. But then Jacob had a couple of really important turning points in his life. One of those turning points was when he met with and wrestled with God. And we know about the story. He met with a man, right? It says it was a man. It says it was an angel. It was a little confusing. But at the end of the story, he says, I have met and I have wrestled with God, and I have overcome. And at that point, God changed his name from Jacob, which meant he deceived, to Israel, which means, overcomes with God. And so his identity was changed, right? In that moment, he went from being a deceiver to one who overcomes with God, who wrestled with God, who overcame. And the story says that God touched his hip and he walked with a limp after that point, right? So he walked different. He looked different. He was a different person. His identity had changed in that moment. Then there was another seminal moment in Esau's life, and this is a little bit later after he had worked all those years, right, for Leah, and then for Rachel, and that whole switcheroo thing that happened there, kind of weird, right? But then he heard that Esau was looking for him, and Esau was out there in the countryside with his troops and whatever, and he was looking for him. And Jacob and Israel at that point says, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So he loads up his family, he loads up all his goods, his caravan, and they go on out there, and he finally meets Esau, and he thinks, all right, that's it, man. Esau is carrying a grudge. He's going to kill me. This is the end, but I'll do what I can to try to make peace. And Esau approaches him and says, hey, brother, it's cool. God has blessed you. God has blessed me. It's all good. No problem, no harm, no foul. I'm kind of interpreting here my own vernacular here, but really Esau was very cool about it. He had no problem. He didn't want to kill Israel, and you can only imagine, that he, heaved a big sigh of relief, and they embraced each other, and it was all good. And it was after that moment, it's very interesting to notice that it was after that moment in time when Jacob had met Esau that he began to really act like the patriarch that God had called him to be, right? Because we know that Jacob now becomes the father of the 12 tribes of Israel. That's a pretty big deal, right? That's a pretty big leadership responsibility, right? To raise these 12 men who are going to become the patriarchs of the nation of Israel. That's a big deal because we know that Israel really laid the foundation for God's story, and out of Israel came the Savior, Jesus Christ, right? Who was of one of those, he was from the tribe of Judah, right? He was from one of those sons, right? You can trace Jesus all the way back to one of those sons, and one of those sons back to the Father. So it was a very big deal. We know that values, that culture, all these things are transmitted through people, through parentage, right? And so Jacob finally was transformed, and he said things like, put away your foreign gods, put away all this nonsense from the old country. We are now going to serve the Lord, right? Now, they didn't have the law yet, but he still knew that they were set apart. God had spoken to him enough, and he knew that he had a divine destiny. All right, now, why do I tell you this whole story, and what does this have to do with leadership? Well, because I think this story beautifully illustrates the transition that needs to happen in our lives in terms of our sense of calling. He had a radical identity change when he wrestled with God, and he had a radical relational hurdle overcome. And it was only after those two things that he really entered into being the, Jacob, the patriarch, right? And so again, this kind of goes back to my model of calling, but I just want to reiterate it and sort of tie it into a scriptural story that I'm sure you're familiar with, is that in order for us to really grow and embrace our calling from God, we need to know who we are. We need to know who we are in Christ. We need to know that God has called us. We need to get rid of those former identities and those things that were kind of, holding us back, some of those things that we thought we wanted to be. When you're a kid, it's like, what do you want to be when I grow up? Well, I'm going to be a, baseball player. I'm going to be an astronaut, whatever it was you wanted to be. Well, as adults, we still kind of have those, juvenile fantasies in a lot of ways. And Paul even said, when I was a child, I thought like a child, and now as an adult, I think like an adult. So we have to mature. We mature in Christ, and we embrace who it is that he has called us to be. And then we deal with the emotional and relational baggage in our lives as well. And you can't understate the impact of relationships in our lives. And when you think about everything that's important to you, everything that causes you pain, everything that's worthwhile, it's probably a relationship. It's not stuff. It's not having the latest and greatest gadgets, as fun and cool as that is. It's not about your position or even your degrees, as great as those are and as important as I think those are. But it's really about the relationships that you have with other people. And what gives us peace at night and what lets us lay our heads down on the pillow in comfort and peace is knowing that we have good relationships with people, that things are good with us, with them, that people love us, that we love other people, and that there's not sort of the emotional and psychic baggage of festering wounds from past relationships. And again, I'm not a psychologist here, but what I do know is that emotional and relational health is vital, vital in kingdom ministry. And so you need to seek that out, and you need to become whole and healthy and do all you can to have healthy, vital relationships with people in your lives. And that's when you can move on and shake and groove as a leader, because you're healthy and you're whole. You don't have any baggage, no hidden agendas, right? And you're ready to really do important things for the kingdom. So I hope you liked my little sermonette there. I hope it was useful. I hope it helped you tie all these things together and to really think about your own growth as a leader, about what's important. Keep pressing on, guys. Keep pressing on. Again, this is just the beginning. I know it's the end of the class, but it's really just the beginning for your process of growth. And some of you I know, some of you are younger and you're just starting your leadership journey, but some of you are older and you're maybe retooling and you're rethinking what's important in life. And I want you to be confident in God's calling, and I want you to be confident in your purpose for school. God still has great things ahead for you. Listen, I'm not a kid either, but every day I know that God has good things for me, and every season or so God changes things up for me, and it's a blessing to try new things, have new challenges. And I want to put myself in that position. I want to be the guy who's taking risks and taking challenges and doing new things. I don't ever want to get stagnant and stale in what I do. And I encourage you as a leader to go for it, make a difference in the world, make a difference for the kingdom's sake, and be blessed. And at the end of the day, at the end of your journey, God will look at you and say, well done, thou good and faithful servant, enter into your rest. And that's what we all want to hear at the end of the day, right? At the end of the, big day, right? So anyhow, I hope you enjoyed this class. It's been a blessing. It's been a gas getting to know you guys, even virtually. And, Lord willing, our paths will cross someday, and we can hug and we can have coffee and get to know each other face to face. But until then, I bid you goodbye. Enjoy the rest of your classes here at the King's University, and may the Lord richly bless you.